Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 129 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ersman, and once again, so glad to have you with us today. Today, I'm joined by repeat guest. Glad to have him back, President David Janzen from Tabor. President Janzen just wrapped up his fourth year as the president of Tabor. And if you listen to the show on a regular basis, you've heard him before. And also, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, you're sick of me talking about this, but I very proudly went to Sterling College, which is Tabor's big rival. I like to remind President Janzen of that every chance I get. So yes, I do mention that a couple times in this episode. But even as this proud Sterling warrior, I have to admit, I really like President Janzen, and there's a lot of really cool things happening at Tabor these days. A few years ago, Tabor launched the Central Kansas Entrepreneurship Center, and they're also in the process of raising funds for their new Business Entrepreneurship Center on campus. And entrepreneurship is an important topic. It's one that President Janzen has a lot of experience, a lot of passion talking about. And as you'll hear today, even if you are not involved with business, or even if you're not necessarily involved with ministry, our culture, our world today really needs entrepreneurs, people coming up with new ideas, launching new companies, starting new products. And again, this is something that President Janzen has a lot of experience in, but also is something he's really passionate about as he's interacting with students and future leaders. And even for those of us in the church, I think we need to continue to innovate, start new programs, start new ministries. I think that's really wise and smart for all of us, really, no matter what our role is. So today, President Janzen walks us through a little bit of his story, some of the really great things happening on the Tabor campus, and again, some of this bigger picture stuff about why entrepreneurship, and more specifically, Christian entrepreneurship, is so important. So I always enjoy my time with President Janzen. I think you'll enjoy this episode too. So let's hear from today's sponsor, and then we'll get right to my conversation with Dr. David Janzen.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mennonite Central Committee. Are you ready for a challenge? This summer, let's pack 25,000 MCC school kits for 25,000 kids around the world. For the chance to win a pizza party, gather your supplies and drop off your school kits during the month of August to be counted. An activity resource packet is available for VBS and Sunday school. Learn more at mcc.org/challenge.
All right, my friends. Well, I'm honored to have a repeat guest, friend of the show, friend to many of us. We're glad to have President Janzen from Tabor back with us. He's just come back from vacation. College presidents are some of the busiest people I know. So, President Janzen, we're honored that you're taking some time to talk with us today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's always a joy to be on this with you, Matt.
That's awesome. So glad to have you with us. You've been on a few times, and a lot of people in our circles know you, and they've probably talked with you, met you a few times, but just quickly, let's catch people up. You've been president at Tabor for come up on 4 years. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I say that I'm a senior. I just graduated, although I'm
nice.
Sticking around. So 5th, 6th year, 7th year senior. But yeah, just finished 4 years at Tabor. It's been great.
And you have a really cool background, which will kind of guide into our conversation a little bit today. But you were a graduate from Tabor, went off and did kind of a lot of things before coming back 4 years ago. Again, a lot of people probably know, but can you give us just the gist of your kind of work history before coming back to Tabor?
Yeah, for sure. After Tabor, I studied math and computer science at Tabor and went to the University of Kansas and did a master's in computer science. It was actually in artificial intelligence, and my first real job was at Sprint, and my title was Artificial Intelligence Analyst back in 1993, before most anybody knew what AI was. So that was pretty fun. So I worked in industry. I taught for a little while computer science, went back and did my PhD in software engineering, and then was out in California at Cal Poly at San Luis Obispo. I directed the software engineering program there for 15 years. And did a lot of entrepreneurship and startup stuff there, especially around mobile apps. I taught what we think was the first Android course at a university when Android first came out. And so that was just a really fun time of launching businesses with students, helping them launch businesses. So it's a bit of my background.
Yeah, awesome. So today we're going to spend some time talking about entrepreneurship and specifically how it kind of overlaps with ministry. And I love talking to you about this because you've kind of lived this out. This is kind of your story, and I know it's something that you're passionate about. And that Tabor, I know, has some great offerings related to that. So let's just start. I think entrepreneurship is one of those words. It's kind of like synergy or something. Like everybody just talks about it, and sometimes I think we say it and we don't really even know what it means. So why don't you just start when you talk about entrepreneurship, like what comes to mind? What are some definitions that you use?
Yeah, there is some almost controversy about it. Some people would say, oh, that's not true entrepreneurship. And so it's great to define terms. I think of entrepreneurship as starting businesses or multiple businesses. It usually involves taking some sort of a risk with the
Mm,
hope of some future profit. So launching a new business or enterprise that usually involves some kind of innovation. And that's often where the controversy comes up is this really innovative or is it just kind of routine? So like if I'm opening a new Subway, is that entrepreneurship? You're
mm,
taking a risk, you're in hopes of a future profit for sure, but it's a proven concept. And so there may not be so much innovation in that. And so some people would say, well, maybe that's just small business development. That's not entrepreneurship.
okay.
Entrepreneurship often involves more of an innovation. I tend to take a broad perspective on that. It's kind of all of those things.
Yeah. You brought up risk, and I think you're right that that's a pretty crucial element of it. And I know a lot of people, some people I think are, I don't know, nature, nurture, or whatever. Some people are just risk takers and some aren't, right? Have
Yeah.
you kind of always been a risk taker? And do you think can you be in entrepreneurship if you aren't necessarily kind of a serial risk taker?
Yeah, I consider myself somewhat of a conservative risk taker.
Okay.
I have started some businesses, some companies. I would call myself something of an entrepreneur, but I typically have had a full-time job and I started things on the side, a
Okay.
side hustle that maybe eventually became a bigger thing. And so I've never been one to just quit my job, go borrow a bunch of money or get, a bunch of investment
Hmm.
and launch some new big venture. Those are big risks
Yeah.
when you're kind of putting your own personal finances and mortgage on the line. Uh,
Yeah.
but yes, I've always been a little bit of a risk taker. And I think, I got that. I saw that in my dad.
Mm.
And my grandfather as well, that I would say they had certainly an entrepreneurial spirit and they were risk takers. And so I observed that. There's actually some interesting research out there on entrepreneurs and risk takers. A very, very high percentage of entrepreneurs are people who lost a parent as a child.
Oh, interesting.
And there's some question about does that have something to do with risk? What's the
Mm.
worst thing that could happen when you're young?
Oh,
Probably it
interesting.
would be to lose your mom or your dad. Uh,
Yeah.
and there's some thinking that perhaps, well, if you survive that, what worse
Mm.
can happen? And
Yeah.
so maybe you have a higher risk tolerance. But
Interesting.
yes, risk is certainly a part of entrepreneurship.
So that explains Batman and Spider-Man and Superman, all these orphans who became superheroes, right? They,
Exactly.
in a different world, they maybe have been entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I know again, so kind of going back to your story and kind of the main thing we're talking about today is kind of the Venn diagram of entrepreneurship and ministry. And again, I know this is kind of something that you're very passionate about, you have experience in. So tell me more about like how did your interests come aligned in those two kind of maybe seemingly on the surface at least different worlds, and how has that kind of played out in your experience?
Yeah, I love this idea of Christian entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And what does that mean? It's an entrepreneurship, but the big question is why? Why are you an entrepreneur? What is it you're trying to accomplish? A lot of entrepreneurs, they're just trying to make money, whether that's just basics, trying to provide for themselves and their family, or maybe trying to get really wealthy.
Hmm.
And sometimes there's that stereotype that entrepreneurs are just greedy and they want to make a lot of money. But I've known so many entrepreneurs that they're just trying to make a living and
Yeah.
do something interesting and creative, and they're just driven by the innovation. Maybe they just love the thrill of it. But the big question of why, as a Christian entrepreneur, you're saying, I want to use this business to somehow expand Christ's kingdom.
Mm.
And what are some ways that I can do that? So one is it could be just that you're launching a business to make money so that you can support the church, so that you
Yeah.
can support missionaries, so you can support others that are doing ministry. But I think you can do so much more than that as a Christian entrepreneur. You can, when you launch a business or an organization, you often get to set the culture of
Hmm.
that. And you can be very open in your faith, in sharing your faith with your employees, with
Hmm.
your customers, perhaps, with your suppliers and vendors, with partners that you work with. And so it puts you in context with people that you can share Christ with, that you may not have the opportunity to do that had you
Hmm.
not launched that business. So that's one of the big ways is you're saying, hey, I'm launching this business so that I can share Christ with the world. I can disciple others. And then there are other aspects of even international missions.
Hmm.
There are a lot of countries, for instance, you can't get into as a missionary,
Right.
but you can go as an entrepreneur. You can go starting a business, launching a business, or doing entrepreneurial or economic development work there, or as a teacher, and education is another path. But I've seen a number of great examples, including some Tabor alumni, but also on a big international scale of people who have gotten into countries even just for themselves or launching large major corporations and hiring people who are Christians with the intent to come in and plant churches in this country
Yeah.
by working in this organization.
And I kind of see another thing that again kind of has played out in your life a little bit, where you were an entrepreneur before coming to Tabor. You had a successful app launch and all the things that you
Yeah.
got to be a part of. So in that sense, you were a Christian entrepreneur in those ways, but now
Mhm.
you're a Christian entrepreneur in a actual ministry setting in Tabor, right? So again,
Right.
what were there some kind of stark similarities or contrasts in those two worlds that you've been in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And launching an app. So because I was doing a lot in software and helping a lot of students
Mhm.
start companies, that was really fun and I enjoyed it. And one of my former students launched a company. I was helping him, mentoring him, advising him, and eventually he asked me like 5 times to join him as a partner. And I finally gave in and said yes. And one of the big reasons was because of his faith that we were aligned as Christians. And I recognized that he did need help more than just advice
Yeah.
and that there were skills that I could bring to it, but that we both had a vision of how can we use this to spread, Christ and use it as a platform and sharing Christ with others. And so that fit really well. At Tabor now, you're always thinking entrepreneurially. As a president of a college, you're thinking, okay, what new majors should we launch? What new sports should we have or activities should we incorporate at the college? How is the world changing? And so you're always looking at things, somewhat looking for opportunities and thinking, what risk do we need to take for the future profit of students coming and it preparing them well for their careers and the world. But what I'm really excited about is helping to instill in students this idea of using the marketplace and entrepreneurship as a context for kingdom work, for taking Christ to the world, and
Yeah.
seeing them get excited about launching a business and using that as a platform to take Christ to the world. And
Yeah.
so we
That's all.
started an entrepreneurship center at
Mhm.
Tabor. It's been almost 3 years ago now, the Central Kansas Entrepreneurship Center at Tabor College.
Uh-huh.
And we're now building a building. We're actually taking the oldest building on campus and we're transforming that and we're going to triple it in size. It's an $11 million project. It's a huge project, but it will be a business and entrepreneurship center to facilitate these kinds of things that are going on. If anyone would like to see renderings and floor plans of the new Business and Entrepreneurship Center, I encourage you to go check it out at tabor.edu/BEC for Business and Entrepreneurship Center. So tabor.edu/BEC. And it's really an exciting project. There's opportunities to give there. We've raised about 9 of the $11 million needed. And so we'd appreciate any help people can give to help us finish up that project. We had a groundbreaking on Tabor Day, April 30, and we hope to start construction yet this summer.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about that because I know it is relatively new. So tell us more, like what kinds of things are you hoping to do with this space?
Yeah. Yeah. The space will have a variety of different aspects to it. On the more entrepreneurial side, it's going to have a maker space in it. So a place where students and community members can come in and experiment with, learn to use different tools, whether it's 3D printers or CNC machines or screen printing machines, industrial sewing machines, whatever,
Yeah,
for
cool.
prototyping and exploring making physical products. There will be a space we call an ideation space, which is where we'll do workshops, and it's kind of just a place where people who are entrepreneurially minded can come and just bounce ideas off each other. It often will take like 1,000 ideas before you get the one that you really are excited enough and think is worth spending the next 2, 3, 4 years of your life investing in. So it's a space where we can do that. And we have an entrepreneurship director that will facilitate that. We connect people with mentors. So those are a couple of key spaces. There's some traditional spaces. We'll also have our academic business department is there. So business faculty will be there, and classrooms and computer labs as well. But then on the top floor, we're going to have a co-working space, a place where people who are actually getting some traction with their businesses can rent an office. Maybe they're not ready to make a long-term commitment downtown or wherever, but they could month by month rent an office as they're launching their business. And that's for the community as well as our students.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's a great idea. And the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear about this is just like, why is this so important to you? And also, why do you think other schools aren't doing this? Because this in itself is a unique idea that a lot of schools that I know of, at least, aren't doing something like this. So is this something that you're just really passionate about, or do you feel like there's kind of a hole in the market that you're hoping to fill with something like this?
Yeah, good question. There are some schools that are doing it, but they're typically really large. It's not happening. Things like what we're doing here don't happen much at schools of our size.
Right.
And so that is what's fairly novel here. We did it at Cal Poly. I was involved kind of from early on when they launched a new Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Cal Poly. And so I was in kind of the ground floor there. And I saw it grow and evolve, and I was a part of that. I was a faculty fellow with their Entrepreneurship Center. So I've seen it done there on a bigger scale. And I think we can do all of that at Tabor. Our students are just as sharp, are just as innovative and motivated and driven. There's just, we're smaller, but we can do all of those same things. So, but you're right. I don't see this happening at small schools, medium-sized schools even. It tends to be really large universities where you see it happening some.
Yeah. Well, I see it as a huge opportunity. I think it's a great idea. So I've got some other kind of big picture questions, but while we're here, let's just continue the Tabor plug, which this kills me as a Sterling person, but I'll let you have your time. So I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool. So tell us more about, I know there's an entrepreneurship program and a degree, and it's not just this new building, but why don't you take us a little bit further? What else does Tabor offer in this field?
Yeah, absolutely. So in entrepreneurship, we do have a degree. So we have a business major, and that's actually our largest major is business. It has several different concentrations within it. And entrepreneurship is one of them. Almost 30% of our students are business majors at Tabor.
Okay.
But you don't have to be an entrepreneurship major to be involved in this. And that's what I love about it. We're a liberal arts college with a lot of pre-professional programs. And so we prepare, like we've got pre-med, pre-dental. We've got a lot of students in the health sciences that are going to med school and PA and PT school. We also have a teacher education program that's really thriving and doing really great, a social work program. We've got health and human performance, exercise science. And so on the athletic side of things, there's a lot of things happening there. Psychology, music, of course. And then the liberal arts. We are a liberal arts college. And we think that's core, especially in this age of AI, where a lot of the schools have kind of gone to a STEM focus, that it's really important to be able to communicate well, to write well, to speak well. It's important to be able to think analytically and critically, to understand history and context and culture, to understand psychology, how people think and work. And I love it that now there's even some of the thought leaders in technology are saying, you know what you need? you need a liberal arts degree. You need a philosophy degree. That's what I would study if I were going to school.
Yeah.
I love it that you can do computer science and philosophy or
Hmm.
biblical studies or history, psychology, communication, and you can do those things together at Tabor. Entrepreneurship is for all of those majors. And
Yeah.
we currently have students that are art majors and music majors and health and human performance majors that are starting businesses and taking advantage of the Entrepreneurship Center.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a major in that.
Well, that's kind of one of the bigger things I wanted to get to is I think, like we said earlier, I think some people are just serial entrepreneurs. They're going to launch more than one product or more than one company. They're just kind of that, they've got that DNA. The risk kind of gets them going. And that's like, everyone knows people like that. And they're probably going to be really successful in some ventures and probably not so much in others, right? But I would say honestly, especially like in the day and age that you just described, I think we all need to be entrepreneurs in some capacity, right? Like if you're going to be in a career for any amount of time, you really can't be stagnant, especially as things get more and more competitive and AI, like you just mentioned. So how at Tabor specifically, but also just in general, like how do you help people understand that this is not just a business principle, but it's really a human thing, especially increasingly so in the career world. How do you help people kind of understand that or think through that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Entrepreneurship, even if you don't go and launch a business yourself, your employer is going to want you to have an entrepreneurial mindset. I want to hire people who understand our business
Yeah.
and think like an owner of being creative and innovative. What could we do to make this even better? Whether it's improving the process or new products or services we might provide. I think most employers out there want employees who come with that entrepreneurial way of thinking. And so we don't imagine that all of our students that try starting a business, while they're a student at Tabor are going to continue that business or go on and launch a business right out of college. Some will. And
Hmm.
we're super excited to watch that and we celebrate that when they do. Many of them, though, they're going to take those principles and they're going to go out, they're going to get a job, they're going to apply those principles. And maybe someday, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, they might launch their own business. I've
Hmm.
actually been surprised. I used to go to a number of entrepreneurial conferences up in the San Francisco, the Bay Area.
Uh-huh.
How many entrepreneurs are in their 40s and 50s and 60s? It's
Mm-hmm.
actually quite common. We often think of entrepreneurs as being young, in
Hmm.
their 20s, full of energy and bright ideas. A lot of entrepreneurs are people who have been in the business world. They see a need and they have the experience and kind of the acumen to
Hmm.
step into a fairly complex product or service that they see that business needs
Hmm.
and often can do it really well. And they're often really well connected, know a lot of other
Yeah.
people to be partners and get funding from.
Hmm.
So we want to serve them as well, not just our traditional undergraduate students.
Again, kind of continuing that a little bit, knowing our audience, most people listening right now are probably pastors or church leaders, probably some congregation leaders as well. And I guess, do you have anything that you want to say to pastors and church leaders about this? Because one of my things that I kind of mourn and grieve a little bit, like, hundreds of years ago, the church was really innovative and the best art was coming out of the church and the best leaders in the world, some of the best leaders in the world history were church leaders, right? And I think in my opinion, I think maybe we've seen a little bit of an uptick in the past, I don't know, a little bit where we were seeing that a little bit more, but I think we kind of went through an era where in large part, the church was a little stagnant when it came to entrepreneurship and art and new ideas. Do you have any insight? Why do you think that is? And how can we kind of start turning that around in church world?
Oh, I love the opportunity to kind of speak to pastors, speak to lay leaders in our churches, and say, this is for you. Churches are organizations, and in a way, they're a business, and we can talk about that. But the same principles can benefit a church, that innovation, taking risks, and thinking about what's the future profit. That profit being seeing people come to know Christ, seeing people grow in their faith. And so when we plant a new church, or launch a ministry within a church, that's entrepreneurship in the broad sense of it. So all of these same concepts, I think, apply. And I would love for pastors and lay leaders to be thinking entrepreneurially within their churches. And so it's tempting when you've got an organization to kind of reach a steady state and just say, this is how we've always done it. We're going to keep doing it. And there's some value to having traditions and to doing things that work, that are proven, that you know, but we can become stagnant easily in that. And it's really important to constantly be looking for what's the next opportunity? What's the next outreach that we could do that's new and innovative and different? How can we reach a group in our community that we're not reaching today? That's entrepreneurial thinking in my mind. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of bivocational pastors out there, and that's one of the segments we want to serve is people who are, maybe they're in a small community, a small church that can't support a full-time pastor. They can only provide a quarter or half-time salary, and that person needs to have a job or run a business. Maybe they can launch their own business, run a coffee shop, a bike repair shop, or whatever it may be. That is somewhat entrepreneurial, a small business, and be in ministry at the same time. There's some great examples of people doing that out there.
Well, again, kind of continuing this, a lot of people who, if you work in church work, a lot of people will say things like, oh, we don't have the budget to be super risky. We have to get everything approved by our deacons or our elders or whoever. Pastors are busy and they probably don't feel like they have time to just brainstorm all these new ideas. So again, if someone maybe they're kind of liking what you're saying and it sounds great and they like the idea, but they feel like there's this ceiling of just reality around them. I'm sure you've bumped into that yourself. What advice would you have for someone in that situation?
Yeah, great question. Be thinking about it, talking about it. There's resources out there, even at Tabor, like we do about monthly, we have a entrepreneurship lecture. We've got this Knock to Call entrepreneurship lecture series that brings in really some fantastic people. A lot of those get published out on YouTube, and many of those, not all of them, but most of those are people with a strong Christian witness that talk about how they do what I would call Christian entrepreneurship. And so those things can be inspiring. That's one piece of it, as well as educational. But you're right. A lot of churches, they might feel like, I don't have time for that, or I don't have money for that. There's a lot of things that just don't take much money that you can do. They do take some time. They do take some thought, but new outreach opportunities, even church planting, you can start with a Bible study in your home, that may not cost a dime, maybe brownies or cookies. And it launches from there. But how do you meet those people, invite them in? What is something that gets people into your church, whether it's, going out into the neighborhood and doing something creative. In the summer is a great time to do something at a park and invite people to it. What would be creative and innovative that's different, that would catch people's attention and just get them to come and start building relationship and see where that goes?
I'm curious if you have any input on just the timing of some of this. I think we're in kind of an interesting era, and I guess maybe pop culture in general, where some of the top entrepreneurs are kind of the new rock stars. I've heard that term before. Like, I think it probably started with Steve Jobs probably, but now everyone knows Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg, and we're kind of in this weird era where we've got these, at least a handful of people that everybody knows who, I mean, they're famous for being entrepreneurs, really. So I don't know, is the timing of some of this are you seeing a kind of resurgence of interest because of some of that, do you think? Are we kind of a new era of entrepreneurship, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in it. We see it amongst our students. There's tons of interest. And part of it is these big high profile names, and people have seen them be enormously successful financially, but also just creating products or services that people want and they use. And so that's attractive. And then other things like Shark Tank, the TV show, it's fun. And then a lot of people have watched that and they're like, I could do that. Some of those ideas are like, oh, I could do that idea. And it makes it a little more accessible. We are seeing a trend where more and more people are wanting to be in business for themselves and
Hmm.
not work for
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
And so, and I think, we need both.
Hmm.
One thing I would say about entrepreneurship is that we have to be starting businesses. If
Hmm.
we don't keep starting new businesses, there won't be jobs for people. There
Mm.
won't be products to buy. There won't be services. Businesses are closing all the time.
Yeah.
And, the statistics say that from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they say that 20% of new businesses close within the first year, something
Mm.
like, I think, 80% close within 15 years, if I remember right. And
Mm.
so with businesses closing, if we don't keep starting businesses, we're going to be in
Yeah.
trouble as a community, as a nation.
Hmm.
And so I think people recognize that and they get excited about doing something for themselves, doing something on their own. And
Yeah.
it's very satisfying.
I think it's an exciting time, and there's obviously so many opportunities that people have today that weren't available even just a handful of years ago. So it is an exciting time. But along with what you just said about all the businesses closing and kind of the excitement of Shark Tank and some of these celebrities we're talking about, do you have a little bit of like a word of caution? Because we can't just all be only starting new things all the time, right? Do you have a little bit of what's your kind of flip side that you also want people to be mindful of?
Right. So a lot of people want to start something and they don't really care what it is. And so be careful of what's your motivation. And also, I say it's really important to just have good mentors and advisors around you that you're getting feedback from,
Yeah.
because and that's where I love our entrepreneurship center on campus. Before a student goes or a community member goes and spends a whole bunch of money and time on something, we want to help them vet that idea and
Yeah.
see pitfalls along the way that we can help them avoid.
Hmm.
And that's what a number of our entrepreneurship lecturers that come in, they talk about the mistakes that they made
Yeah.
and how they learned hard lessons, lost a lot of money, wasted a couple of years because, they made some bad decisions. And that's what we're hoping that our center can help people avoid some of those mistakes. We're not going to guarantee we avoid all mistakes, but
Yeah.
and so yeah, you do need to be careful. And just because you've got a new idea doesn't mean that it's going to succeed. I
Don't quit your
often
job and
say,
put your mortgage up on it.
yeah. I've often thought that when you have an idea, you might think, oh, nobody's thought of this. Well, what are there
Mm.
like 8 billion people in the
Yeah.
world? I
Right.
expect 1,000 people have thought of that same idea. It's
Yeah.
just who's going to actually go and spend a couple of years really working hard on it and put that idea into practice, make it a product or a service. Not many. And so you might be the one to do that, but you want to make sure that it's a good idea. And that's where a lot of people will pivot. You start with an idea, you start to find out, oh, this isn't working out like I thought, but it brings you to another idea that's even better, and you pivot and you go another direction, which is all healthy and part of the process.
Yeah. Very cool. You've mentioned a few times that there's been some kind of cool examples of students that you're working with who are they have some cool ideas or projects or businesses or whatever. I know the actual entrepreneurship center's new, but in your 4 years, what are some examples? Like, what are you seeing students cook up that kind of has you excited?
Yeah, I've been surprised. A number of them are food related. We've
Oh,
got
okay.
one or two that are art related. But in the food area, there's a couple of guys that created something called Gains Central. It's an overnight oats protein bowl, and it's kind of a meal replacement or a supplement. They started out doing it mostly for athletes. We have a lot of athletes on campus, and they've sold thousands of them on campus. But it turns out there's lots of people that need protein, even older people, and easy meals that are quick and fast and yet provide a lot of what you need, especially protein wise. And so they've been enormously successful. Especially what I've been impressed with is they just keep iterating. They started with an idea. They've been iterating on the packaging, iterating on the flavors and the combination of the mix. I remember when they first came to me, we talked a lot about scale. How are you going to scale this to a
Hmm.
point where you can make a living on it when you graduate? and
Yeah.
not just selling, a couple hundred a month, the ones that you make. Can you franchise this? Can you do a dry packet that you could sell on Amazon? And
Yeah.
it took them a couple of years, but they finally got there. They got a dry packet, they packaged it beautifully, and it's something that they can mail order sell. So that's been a great example that's been really successful on campus. There's another young lady who is just a phenomenal artist at Tabor
Mm.
right now, and she's been doing tiny cards, these beautifully hand-drawn little tiny cards. And it took us a long time to convince her that you can't hand draw every single one. You're not
Right.
going to make any money. And so finally,
Yeah.
she got a printer that she was satisfied with, and they're just adorable little tiny cards that you can attach to a gift, rather than
Uh-huh.
a great big card that overwhelms a small gift. Probably she's going to make her money in large paintings because she's such an outstanding artist. But that's an example, just helping her think through what will make money and how does she take her gifts and talents and turn that into something that's profitable that could be sustaining for her.
Awesome. Very cool. So people listening, especially if they're close to Hillsboro, I imagine at least some people listening might be really intrigued by this and they want to come try out the center and all the cool things that they offer. What if people want to learn more about either the Entrepreneurship Center in general or some of the programs going on? What are some kind of next steps to kind of get engaged?
Yeah. So go to our website, might be a good place, tabor.edu/CKEC, CKEC, we call it, the Central Kansas Entrepreneurship Center. And that's got some information on just what we do, as well as it will have information on upcoming events. And that's one of the best things would be to look for an event that's going on. One of the talks that's coming up, for instance, or if somebody, whether you're high school, college, older, you could be 80 years old, if you want to come and participate in, like, we have competitions from time to time. So every semester we'll have one or two competitions, an elevator pitch competition, a side hustle challenge, a business plan competition. And so people can participate in that. They often have some cash prizes with them.
Hmm.
And so if somebody has an idea they want to try out, they can do that. But through the CKEC, we have a director. And so you can reach out to the director. And if you want to just come and pitch an idea and ask for help, we can do Zoom appointments or in-person appointments, all of that. And then today, we don't have a great home on campus, but in a year and a half from now, there will be a great space that will be built once this building is done, and you'll
Okay.
be able to come and you'll be able to see it in action.
So if you were to look ahead, I don't know, 5, 10 years, what do you hope this does? Like for Tabor, for Hillsboro, for USMB, or just for the general public? Like where do you see this going, and kind of what are some of your hopes and dreams for it?
Yeah, some of it's already happening. So, for instance, we have some Tabor alumni who are in a country that I can't tell you who they are or where they are,
Hmm.
but they're using entrepreneurship as the mechanism to take Christ to that country. And
Hmm.
so I would love to see a lot more of that happening.
Hmm.
I would
Yeah.
love to see church plants happening within USMB from people who participated in some of our entrepreneurial programming, and they got some of those concepts and ideas, how to make a business plan, how to ideate, how to rally people together around a cause, and see some churches being planted through that
Yeah.
avenue. I'd love to see some of our students and our alumni just being really successful. We had one of our students who just graduated and had started a business that he had done here at Tabor, and said, my goal is to give $1 million to Tabor someday because of what I learned here in
Wow.
entrepreneurship. And so I would love to see that, to see a number of our alumni just doing really well and
Hmm.
giving back to causes that continue to expand the kingdom.
Very cool. As we start to close out, I want to give you kind of one more chance. Anything you haven't said yet that you want to hit on is fine. But again, if we're kind of keeping our audience of pastors and church leaders in mind, do you have any final advice for them? Maybe they feel like this just isn't their sweet spot and they feel like they just don't have an in them to do this, or maybe they do, but they have some challenges. What kind of parting words would you have specifically for pastors and church leaders?
I think the question is God an entrepreneur?
Hmm.
And if we are created in his image, what does that mean? What are the implications for us? And so I have come to the conclusion, yes, God is an entrepreneur. So, is he creative and innovative? Absolutely. I mean, look at the heavens, look at the earth, look at human beings, how diverse and interesting and amazing we are, his
Yeah.
creation. So, he's definitely creative and innovative. Did he take a risk? Absolutely. He took a
Mhm.
risk of giving us free will.
Mm-hmm.
And that, he could have made humans who just automatically loved him, worshiped him, followed him, obeyed him, but he didn't. He said, I'm going to let you choose.
Mm-hmm.
With the hope of a future profit being that we would choose to love him, to worship him, to follow him. And and so I think if God is an entrepreneur, he fits all that my definition of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. And we're
Uh-huh.
created in his image. We have that in us.
Mm.
We have innovative, creative tendencies that are innate. Some people, it feels like it's more on the surface, but we all
Mm-hmm.
have it in some place, in some way. Maybe it's buried down in there, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And that it can be scary to take risks, but we are risk takers. And just to think real hard about what's the future profit? Why am I doing this? What risk is worth it? I've been thinking a lot lately about treasures in heaven, storing up treasures in heaven. And I've
Mm-hmm.
come to the conclusion that people are our treasures in heaven. The people that come to know Christ and follow him, whatever it is that we do, that is a part of them making that choice. And so that's the future hope, is storing up those treasures in heaven.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. I love the parallel of God the creator, God the entrepreneur. That's awesome. I love it. So one more time, make sure I got this right. Tabor.edu/CKEC. Is that right?
That's right.
So that's where we can go get more information or get in touch with people who are involved in that.
Yep, that's right. We'd love to have you on campus. I'd love to have you follow some videos and get connected with us.
Well, President Janzen, it's always an honor to talk to you. Thank you again just for making some time for us. I think it's an awesome program. So way to go. Keep it up. I love it. And any kind of final parting words here before you log off for today?
I love you. I appreciate you, Matt. I love the USMB family and all the churches, pastors that are out there. And we just see ourselves as partners in this work that God is doing on this earth. So thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
USMB's Lead Coaching is an intentional, ongoing, life-on-life relationship that empowers local church staff members and lay leaders to realize their full potential and purpose with confidence, courage, joy, and vocational accomplishment. Sign up to meet with a trained MB coach to explore where you are and create a map to where you want to be. Coaches are skilled at helping you define goals and develop relevant action plans, all while providing the accountability and support you need to succeed. For more information about Lead Coaching, contact Ed Boschman by phone at 661-549-6021 or via email at edboschman@gmail.com or visit www.usmb.org/lead-coaching.
Well, one more time, President Janzen, thanks again so much for being with us today. Thanks again to all of you listening at home, wherever you are. Listening back and thinking back, I think my favorite takeaway from this is that God is an entrepreneur. He took risks, he started something new, and he's a creative innovator, and we're made in his image, so we should have those qualities as well. That's one of the things that stuck with me. And it is just really cool to see all the growth and exciting things happening at the Tabor campus. So once again, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the Business Entrepreneurship Center that they're currently raising funds for, if you'd like to donate or check out some of those videos and the floor plans that President Janzen was talking about, you can learn more about that at tabor.edu/BEC for Business Entrepreneurship Center. All right, so with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. So thanks again so much for listening. Hope you're having a great summer. We'll see you next time, and go Sterling.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.